In this video, I cut metal with dubious precision, try to tame obscure electronics in pursuit of efficiency, spend too much time balancing proportions, and eventually land on a thing that makes everyday progress much easier for me, and it's also really nice to look at. Hope you enjoy this. If music was about outcomes, the best songs would be just one crashing chord. But you know that's not the case. It makes sense for music, but for life, it's a little less intuitive. I grew up in a world where outcomes are what we celebrate. Results, milestones, the graduation, targets, jobs, all of that. And though outcomes are important for good reasons, I feel the process is the real hero that should get some prime time. Take this YouTube journey, for example. Sure, there are milestones marked by plaques, but what if I make something that celebrates the process and encourages movement? Okay, but how? Functionality-wise, I imagined this to feature a clean, simple way of displaying key stats of my journey in motion as they change, and maybe a few other tricks on top of that. Aesthetically, I wanted this to be familiar and hint towards the real deal, therefore I planned on using different materials while maintaining the overall visual consistency via similar proportions between elements. Since I wanted this to look like a plaque, it was essential for the screen to just disappear. I want the illusion of printed text floating on a page. So I did some research and gathered a couple of components to hopefully achieve this. To adorn this, I thought about different combinations of materials and settled on aluminum as a good match against the reflective surface I had in mind. For the electronics, I wanted to simplify this as much as possible. I veered away from Raspberry Pis or equivalent and instead found an ESP32 microcontroller already attached to a screen. This was exactly what I wanted. Something that can just run one piece of code as soon as I plug it in, a glorified appliance. And when it arrived, it looked great, but there were absolutely no instructions to be found. No leaflet, no QR code, no repo, no link, literally complete silence. I wasn't exactly inspired with confidence when I looked this product up on YouTube and found precisely one video with these comments under it. Fantastic. Looking at the firmware, there was the side quest of displaying information on the screen in the first place. There was formatting it precisely as I wanted it, connecting to the internet and retrieving the YouTube stats themselves. And perhaps a couple of other cool complications because we are romantic. In the spirit of eating the frog first, I started on the display. But where do I truly begin on this? Their website doesn't even mention this as a model. The Amazon listing doesn't have any links. The pack itself gives no clues. Of course, I could have just given up and embraced a Pi Zero approach, but I was committed to the sweet low power of the ESP32. Eventually, I found some libraries that could be used from this manufacturer's other products and started experimenting. There was no progress for days until eventually I realized I had to override some settings in Arduino, and one night I finally managed to get this to display something. Not much, but it felt glorious. And then fast forward another week, I had a working version of text, but it jittered. This horizontal jitter may seem like a small thing, but it was going to take me about 100 trial and error attempts and a week to solve. After the longest side quest in history, moving from library to library, downgrading libraries because of incompatibilities and dependencies, patching the libraries manually, I thought I had it. Now, how can I display my stats on here? It turns out you need a Google Cloud account for this. And this is sad because I remembered many stories with Google Cloud accounts ruining lives. Alas, I pushed through and it seemed like everything was working. It was CAD time. Remember, I wanted this to be familiar but not identical to the real thing. So here, I was more concerned with proportions rather than absolute size. Fortunately, I didn't even have to worry about absolute size because YouTube shrunk the plates last year to fit a standard 3D printer bed. Unfortunately, these deflated dimensions are nowhere to be found, so I had to get creative with this. Use the old size and some video comparing the two, scaling and some maths to get some approximate results. Anyways, since we're dealing with parametric modeling, I thought I can always iterate on this. It always bothered me that the main plaque is just silver on silver, so I added some separation. We'll see if this works or not. Inside of my constraints, I wanted the frame to be subtle and in one piece. I think it looks way better this way. I also wanted a backplate to confine the components to only their preordained location to achieve balance. Of course, there are no accurate dimensions for the display board, so I had to iterate a little on that as well. I also made a template for the front to prevent me from positioning the play button incorrectly. After ages of fine-tuning the image on this, I felt the finish line was in sight. Honestly, I could have just sized everything around the acrylic I bought, but my printer wasn't big enough for that, so I had to find a way to reduce the size of my acrylic. I found online this trick to score it and then snap it, and it kind of worked, but also almost gave me a heart attack. I did not expect it to sound like I dropped a bomb in the living room. Of course, not all edges broke off neatly, but I pushed through. This, however, is just transparent at the moment, so I worked on that next. After a couple of hours of pushing bubbles, I reached saturation. It wasn't perfect, at least one of the edges of the acrylic looked cut by a Neanderthal, but it was good enough. Plus the edges will be covered anyways. And it fit with the theme today, that were not a collection of picture-perfect moments, but an ongoing, at times messy work in progress. With this done, I couldn't find any more excuses to delay the inevitable. PLA isn't forever, but metal is closer. So I embarked on a surprisingly difficult journey, cutting some aluminum on this shiny little green CNC. At first I thought, how hard can this be? 3D printers are 3-axis motion systems. This must be that, but just with a dangerously sharp spinning bit. First challenge after setting this up, the many things that you have to buy around the machine itself. The Diderot effect at its finest. The stock, a dust shoe, shop vac, hose, cyclone separator, bits, collet, WD-40, medium thickness glue. It was just a lot. It was piling up around the flat. Second challenge was the cam itself, which, if you don't know, is the equivalent of a slicer. It turns your design into G-code. But think more of a slicer in the early 2000s. I'll tell you more about that in a second, but first, I'm at the PC a lot. Nerve injury in your wrist is no joke and can sneak up on you silently. After years of mouse and keyboard use, your median nerve can eventually reach a tipping point, and symptoms such as tingling, numbness, or weakness suddenly appear. Carpio is a soft rest developed to elevate your wrist just enough to relieve the strain on your nerve and shift the pressure naturally into your palm. It sits on a super smooth Teflon sled to glide with your arm effortlessly and support you where you need it. And this unique wing design allows for unrestricted blood flow and natural ventilation. If you're curious about this, there's an affiliate link in the description that will also give you money off your order if you end up grabbing one for yourself. I like it. Cam, on the other hand, I found cam software to be very unintuitive. You would think the software could do a lot of heavy lifting for you. Plug into the software the bit you're using, the machine, the stock, the outcome, and the app should give you some decent values. Instead, what I found are apps that pretty much invariably expect you to come up with all of the settings manually. It's an incredible amount of control thrown your way, but in this case, I would have been so happy with an auto option. This is all to justify why it was here that I messed up. I felt like I was ready for the main event, but it turns out I was not. The cam software I used didn't allow me to add ramping, but I thought, how bad can this be? Well, quite bad. The bit boldly plowed head-on into each new layer. Of course, I didn't know what to listen for, so I let it run until the router eventually dislodged itself and almost tore the whole thing apart. The machine itself was great, super rigid. It carried on with the cut, but it was too late. And the mess made in the process was extraordinary. It was as if the powerful shop vac I just bought was just for decoration. I really tried to do everything right, but still managed to mess this up, and this was my one shot to make my schedule. But after a few minutes of peak frustration and utter defeat, I checked the cutting bit, and despite the violence, it was fine. The mess was already there. How about I give this thing one final try? I didn't have enough space for a full button, but a baby button that I could squeeze just about near the relic of my own failure. And this time, I adjusted everything. The plunge, the feed rate, the depth of cut, and braced for whatever came my way. I anxiously pressed send. I was so nervous I even forgot to attach the damn vacuum. But despite this, layer by layer, the CNC did it. It cut and cut again with great confidence, and the shiny metal left behind was an instant joy. So much preparation culminating in less than 5 minutes of ecstasy. Of course, with a smaller button, I now had to adjust the prints, but it didn't matter. I was so happy this finally worked out. After weeks, I was about to be able to assemble the whole thing, and this is what I ended up with. This is the work in progress plaque. It's designed to change with the journey and celebrate every step of the way. For me, this means that it will show me every one of your comments as it comes in, plus a subscriber count. And it's actually really useful. It's a silent, discreet reminder of my connection with this space. And I'm so pleased with how it turned out. I know on the surface this looks relatively simple, but if you think about it, the project extends the ESP32 into a stable cloud pipeline. It combines optics with material properties to create the impression of a borderless experience. And for the first time for me, the design combines several materials and fabrication processes to form something unique and deeply personal. It was so satisfying. A massive journey condensed as best as I can in a story of just a few minutes. If this entertained, moved, or inspired you, please subscribe. It means so much, especially as I'm a small channel. I learned a lot in this and I had to adapt a lot. For instance, let me tell you a secret. My original intent was to take all of the usernames of you who commented so far and engrave them, and I got quite far into this. I looked into the API, I made a script to dump all of the comments, I processed the data in Excel, and even got so far as importing it into CAM. But my laptop could not handle this, and part of me now thinks it was a kindness that the universe threw my way. I was not ready for more than a profile cut on the CNC, so I have loads to learn. But one day, we'll get there. My homebrew plaque has been living on a shelf in the study for a couple of weeks now, and it serves its purpose remarkably well as a constant reminder to engage with the process. And I thought maybe some of you might like to make something like this, so I tweaked the firmware to make this universal, and I'm open sourcing it for you to use for free. I made it so that the ESP32 becomes a web portal to allow you to plug in any information you want. It works via a browser or an API. It's also on your network, so no subscriptions, no pinging home, ads, cloud services, nothing. You can keep this entirely contained. So if you're curious, give this a go. It's very simple to plug information into this to surface movement in your own life. Maybe you want to put it on the wall to give you the number of runs you went on, or number of sales, trees planted, or anything else you might be interested in. I really hope you enjoy this video, and I hope you choose to stick around. See you in the next one. Bye.